Good morning, ladies. So what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be starting our next unit on natural disasters, how people respond to them, and the effect that they have on their lives. So a lot of our stories may be dealing with different natural disasters and how people overcome these tragedies. So today our learning target is I can identify character feelings and reactions to major events. So again, the way that we are identifying our character feelings is we're really going to be focusing on those words and actions of that character. Okay. Also, too, the major event here is going to be a storm. So we're going to be focusing on how that character feels and reacts to the storm. In the Middle of the Storm by Raina Easenstark. We all knew about it before it happened. Everyone told us it was coming. The schools even closed early. My mom says that when she was a kid growing up in New York City, school was never closed. It was a big deal. It was October 29th, 2012, and it was my 10th birthday. That wasn't the big deal. Hurricane Sandy was the big deal. It was going to hit the city. Of course, I always knew that New York was very close to the ocean, but a hurricane coming seemed weird. Hurricanes seemed foreign, tropical things, something that happens where it's hot and humid, where there are palm trees, places like Florida, not New York. My grandma used to live in Florida and is obsessed with the ocean. She always says that when she first came to New York, the thing she loved most was how you could take the subway to the ocean. She loves taking my sister and me on the subway all the way out to Coney Island. We walk along the beach, but we also go to the aquarium. I have to admit the ocean makes me a little nervous, but I love the aquarium. I love how quiet and dark it is downstairs with the huge tanks of fish. It helps ease my worries and makes me feel incredibly peaceful. I like to sit in front of the big tanks and imagine that I am a sea creature too, floating serenely on the calm water. That is, when I'm not chasing after my sister, Janie. Once she ran off by herself in search of sharks. Luckily, we found her at the octopus tank with her face stuck to the glass like a starfish. She's sweet, but a little unpredictable. So before we go on, I want to just make sure that, so for this paragraph here, okay, he's describing his feelings, right? But he's talking about how he's reacting to the aquarium out on Coney Island. So again, don't get confused, right? We're focusing on the major event of the storm and how our character acts to that. Oops, I'm sorry. Get out of this. My mom and Janie and I live in Brooklyn, not as far out as Coney Island. We live in a brownstone. It's just what it sounds like, a building made out of brownstone. Our whole block is brownstones. We live on the very top floor, which is the fourth floor. There are 2 bedrooms. Janie and I share the bigger room, which isn't really very big. My narrow bed is next to the window, though, and this suits me just fine. At night, if I'm having trouble sleeping, I can peek under the curtain. I love to look out at the enormous old trees that line our block. These protectors stand with their huge arms holding everyone on our block, and I feel like it keeps us safe. My mom says that some of the biggest trees have been here for over 100 years. She says that they have seen more than we will ever know. Looking at those big old trees makes me feel peaceful too. On the morning of October 29th, 2012, I woke up excited. It was my 10th birthday. If it had been a regular day, I would have gone to school and my mom would have brought in her famous cupcakes, but school was closed. And this made my birthday feel a little more special. Not only was I getting a day off for my birthday, but a hurricane was coming too. I was excited, but also a little nervous. My mom had prepared me a special fruit salad for breakfast, but I had too many butterflies in my stomach to eat all that much. So when she flicked on the news, I started getting pretty nervous. I began asking her lots of questions. Will the storm be bad? Is it a hurricane like the kinds they find in Florida? Do we have to leave our apartment? Are a lot of people leaving? Mom told us that we wouldn't have to leave, but that we would have to stay inside to be safe. Safe from what? Are we in real danger? I kept thinking. My mom said it would be a severe storm. No one knew how strong it would be, but everyone was taking precautions. People who lived closer to the water were being told to evacuate their homes, and those who lived farther from the ocean, like us, were told to stay indoors. I was glad we could stay in our apartment, but the excitement for my birthday was quickly beginning to evaporate. Okay, ladies, so again, make sure that you're paying attention to the paragraph that we just read, and you're focusing on how our main character is reacting, not about how everybody else is evacuating, about how he is reacting. I don't remember when it started, but at some point the wind and rain came. It was like a regular thunderstorm at first. Nothing too bad, really. Janie asked my mom to tell us about that time that she was waiting for a bus during high school when a really bad storm started. The wind was so strong that she and her two friends were being blown around the street like loose newspaper. They ran to the ice cream truck parked at the corner and begged the man to let them come in. They waited out the storm in the back of the truck, sneaking sprinkles when the ice cream man wasn't looking. After the story, Janie looked out the window and I knew she wanted to go outside. She was probably wondering what it would be like to blow around like loose paper in the wind. I was fine not knowing. Then we heard what sounded like an enormous crack. I had never heard anything so loud in my life. It made us all jump and cry out. The crack made me think the sky had actually torn in half. I was pretty sure that wasn't possible, but I couldn't imagine what that sound was. And then we heard a huge crash outside. We rushed to the window in the living room that looked out onto our block. A tree had been ripped out of the ground by its roots. Those enormous trees on our block were our neighbors, our protectors. But now one of them had fallen across the street and landed on a parked blue car. The car alarm screeched and screeched. It sounded like the car was in agony, crying out for help. The sounds from outside roared in our ears, the fierce wind, the crashing trees, the screaming alarms. For a while, all we could do was stare out in amazement. We didn't know whose car had been crushed, but it looked terrifying. Luckily, no one had been outside when the tree crashed, and luckily, we didn't even have a car. My mom started taking pictures of our block from the window. She showed us some of the pictures on her phone from her friend Miguel. He was driving in Queens, not far from his house. He had driven right up to the bridge when he had to turn around. You could see the water churning under the bridge. No one had expected the water levels to rise so high. The water was crashing into people's houses. Janie wanted to see more pictures, but I think my mom saw the worried look on my face. She said, "No more pictures right now, girls," and put her phone away. So again, in this paragraph here, right, we're not talking about the friend McGill having to turn around. Focus only on our main character and what's happening with the family. All of a sudden, we felt a shaking right in our apartment. I screamed, "What's happening?" We could see that the windows in the living room were bending far from the force of the wind, almost the way the cards bend when you shuffle them. Expect that windows are not supposed to bend. "Mom!" I shouted. "Are the windows going to break?" "No, Rosa, of course not." Okay, so here we get our first name of our main character. Her name is Rosa. But I could see that she was just as scared as I was. Janie looked like she wanted to get a closer look. My mom backed us out of the living room and into the kitchen. At that moment, all the lights went out. Janie and I both cried out. "It's okay," said my mom, hugging us both. "We just lost power, that's all." She ran over to what she calls the utility drawer. It is full of all sorts of things, papers and menus and things like that. Luckily, it all has candles, which is what she was looking for. She found, oh, I'm sorry. Oh no, I lost my spot. There we go. She found a big box of matches we used for the stove sometimes and started to light the small round candles. In the middle of lighting them, she said to me, "Well, here's your birthday after all. This is a good time to have candles, don't you think?" I smiled at her, but wasn't feeling all that happy about my birthday anymore. I kept thinking about the windows. What if they crashed in? And then all the wind and rain came into our apartment. I was so glad we lived on the top floor. But I started worrying about our neighbors. What would happen if their apartments filled with water? And my grandma, was she safe? Were her windows bending like cards? My mom's phone rang then, and it was Grandma. Mom and I had been worried about her, but Grandma was totally fine. She lived in a very high apartment building in Manhattan. It was the same building my mom had grown up in. So far, all that happened there was that her building had been shaken a bit from the wind. She still had power, at least. My mom took the phone into her bedroom to talk to Grandma. I followed her to the door and heard her say that she wasn't sure if she'd have a cell service much longer. When I turned back around, Janie was opening our front door just a crack. "Was she crazy? What was she doing?" "Wow," she said. Her voice sounded thrilled and excited. It was so black in the hallway, but then our small black cat, Maxine, shot out through the open door in the hallway. "No!" I hissed. But it was too late. Maxine never left our apartment before. I wonder if the darkness and the howling wind had frightened her. Maybe she was trying to get away from it all. But where would she go? The hallway was so dark that I could only see Maxine's eyes glowing for a single second. Then she was gone. Janie immediately started running down the hallway, following her. "What are you doing? Come back here!" I whispered hoarsely. even though I felt like shouting. I didn't want our mom to hear me. "We have to go after Maxine," called back Janie. But I saw her dark shape bobbing down the black hallway, and then she too was gone. "Janie!" I hissed, but she didn't answer. My mom's phone still had service at times, and we checked the news and looked at pictures. People had it so much worse than we did. What was a little darkness? At least our apartment was high above the storm. At least we hadn't gotten trapped in our car somewhere near a bridge. At least the ocean hasn't risen up and burst through our front door. Mom put birthday candles on the cupcakes when they came out of the oven, and I made a wish. I probably shouldn't say what the wish was, but of course I wished that Maxine was safe and that she would come back to us. When it was time for bed, I realized I couldn't possibly sleep not knowing where Maxine was. Her mom was in the bathroom with Janie, who was crying as she brushed her teeth. She felt the worst because she was the one who had let Maxine out. No one blamed her, but she kept crying and crying. Suddenly I felt braver. Maybe it was my birthday wish or something, but I decided then that I had to find Maxine on my own. I knew Mom was keeping a strict eye on Janie. She had given her a stern lecture about running after Maxine in the dark, but she would never expect me to leave the apartment. I wouldn't go outside, but I wanted to check the hallway once more. I snuck over to our front door, opened it a crack, and peered down the hallway. It was just as dark as ever. Maybe it was even darker than before. My heart started pounding as I slipped into the hallway. I started running down the hall in the darkness. I wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. Suddenly, I saw a pair of glowing eyes at the other end of the hall. Was I seeing things? "Maxine!" I hissed. Suddenly, I heard a meow and returned. The glowing eyes ran toward me in the hallway. I scooped over and ran back to our apartment. "Mom!" I shouted. "Maxine is back!" It took a while, but eventually our block got back to normal. Even so, I felt different somehow. People came in to clear the dead branches strewn all over the street. The crushed blue car was towed away. Our power came back on. My grandma was safe, and thankfully so was my sister. And Maxine was back. No one could believe that I had gone out to look for Maxine in the storm. I could tell Janie was impressed. Even though my mom scolded me, I knew she was mostly relieved, and maybe a little bit proud too. So it was my 10th birthday. Each birthday since, I take a look out of my window at the enormous trees left on our block. I didn't really think of protectors as them anymore, but as friends. We survived the storm together, and we're all a little bit older and a little bit stronger. Okay, so what I want you to focus on, again, I'm going to go back up here to our learning target just to show you quickly. Oh, this was a long story. Hope we enjoyed it. Our learning target is I can identify character feelings and reactions to main events. Okay, so again, you're focusing on Rosa. Remember, she's the name of our main character. And the major event that happened, obviously, was the storm. So make sure we're not getting confused about when they talked here about the grandma living in Florida and going to the aquarium. Make sure you're not talking about other friends. We talk about the mom's friend, Miguel, and what happened to him when he was driving, and about what happened to the parked car. But again, make sure that we're not getting confused with that. You're focusing only on what happens to our main character and the events that happens to her, her mother, and her sister. Okay, so again, what is the main idea of the story? That's what you're focusing on here. Okay, make sure we're using wrap. Number 2, we got a 2-parter. Oops, sorry I keep doing that. Number 2, reread paragraph 4. In this paragraph, the narrator describes her feelings on the morning of her birthday. I was excited, but also a little anxious. Which word is a synonym, meaning has a similar meaning to anxious? Part A and Part B. What can you infer from this paragraph about why Rosa is anxious? So again, we're talking about those character feelings. So you need to tell me what you think anxious means, and then why Rosa is anxious. What can you infer about Rosa as a person? How would you describe her? And use quotes to support your answer. So again, here, how would you describe her? We're talking about character traits. Okay? So make sure you're using quotes and text evidence to support your claims. Number 4, look back at paragraph 2. Reread the sentence. Luckily, we found her at the octopus tank with her face stuck to the glass like a starfish. Explain what the phrase, her face stuck to the glass like a starfish, literally means, right? Figuratively, what is this? Like a starfish, right? Think simile or metaphor. And what does it actually mean with her face stuck to the like a starfish? What does that tell you about how she feels about what she's looking at? Number 5, throughout the story, the trees are referred to as protectors. For example, in paragraph 3, the text says, "The protectors stand with their huge arms holding everyone on our block. Which of the following best explains the meaning of the sentence?" Okay, so again, it's about how the character feels about the trees outside her house. Number 6, how does Hurricane Sandy affect Rosa and her family? Name 3 ways and provide a quote from the text for each. So here it's kind of more extended response-y than short response, so you need 3 ways and a quote from the text to support each. So one way with a detail, another way with a detail, third way with a detail. Okay, so 3 details total that go along with your 3 ways. Okay. So again, ladies, make sure that you are using RAP for your short responses, ECI for your multiple choice. If you don't have a highlighter at home, that's okay. Just go back and maybe do a little star or underline in like a squiggly way instead of just a straight line to show where you got your evidence, okay? So again, I still want you to keep getting into that habit. It's a really excellent strategy when working with multiple choice questions. And again, RAP, can't just have your inference, I need your details as well.